Hi, welcome to this channel on magnetic energy technology principles applications. This video is going to be called Magnetic Energy and Orchestrated Living, and that's a strange title, partly because I didn't feel comfortable using scientific determinism, and that's a lot because they include time and the past, and it's not really interdimensional, and there's a lot of things that it just falls short. And no disrespect to Stephen Hawking, but it's just, there's just so much more than meets the eye with this. And so those theories don't really they don't do it justice. There's a lot of good math out there, and that's how a lot of these theories are. There's so much good math, but just because you have math doesn't mean you have reality. So those two things don't necessarily jive, and so orchestrated living. So the source of all in this universe, the universe that we're aware of anyway, has this energy that comes out at all times. It goes throughout the universe, goes throughout and comes into our system and our planet and sustains everything at an incredibly high rate. So it's interdimensional energy, it's super fast, it travels fast, it's relatively neutral in nature, and this is from a magnetic energy model point of view, of course. And here's the thing, that energy at a subatomic level is magnetically encoded. Okay, this is a fairly serious topic, about as serious as I can get. Sorry. Okay, so it's subatomically, it's magnetically encoded energy, and it goes to a nearly infinitely deep level, meaning that the encoding can last through those particles. They're really energetic structures. It can last through those energetic structures through an untold number of systems. So as energy moves through our system and moves and goes into other systems, the encoding is still in place, and it actually picks up coding and detracts from coding. So here's what's happening. There's an encoding that goes with all of this, and I'm going to get this right back to our daily lives, because that's really what this video is about, is living and like yin and yang and karma and that kind of stuff. But I didn't really want to call it that because those have there's so many connotations that come with those terms. So the energy has this it has a plan, it has a path, it has a script that's embedded in it. And when something causes that energy to go off script, then it automatically attracts corrective action. So now just that principle alone, that the energy automatically attracts corrective action as soon as it goes off script, on a global scale, this helps explain partly why we're in the situation we're in right now, and why the planet has to go through some fairly dramatic changes fairly quickly, and we have to go through this reset that's all on this, like, basically this event scale that's being orchestrated right now. And that started really in a big way. It started partly when electricity came out, but that wasn't really it. It was atomic testing that really kicked a lot of things into play, because we not only contaminated our system, we contaminated multiple systems. And so that kicked in a whole regimen, a whole program had to be developed for cute little planet Earth before it screws things up in a big way across many solar systems and et cetera, et cetera. So as soon as something goes off script, a corrective immediately. And now you got to keep in mind, we're talking about outside of space and time when this energy attracts. Okay, this is a quantum process. The source, I'm going to speak for the source, so oh my God, don't speak for the source. And you can see how about what I'm about to say gets interpreted into religion and God and God's plan and all those type of ideas. But the source it processes this energy, and it releases this energy outside of space and time. Okay, so time comes into play when we get into like our dimension, in this what we call the physical dimension, and we're inside of what we might call a time circuit or a time pulse circuit, and that causes events to take place sequentially. But outside of that, at the source level, that all the events are taking place at the same time, and that's really mind-boggling and hard to imagine. But if you imagine a supercomputer times infinity, then you can kind of get where I'm going on this. And this is it's a terrible analogy to compare the source to a supercomputer, because then I'm starting to get into this whole, oh my God, we live in an artificially run and artificial intelligence run universe. And no. Now, is it an intelligently run universe? Well, that's pretty debatable. I mean, these magnetic encoding processes are so deep and so complex, it's kind of hard not to say it's intelligently being orchestrated at all times. On the other hand, I don't want to argue with physicists that are going to say, oh my God, God's not real or whatever. But it will come to the point where the process is measured and monitored, and whatever's behind that encoding, however that's taking place, because it's taking place way faster than space and time that we can process, something is behind it. So if you want to call that intelligent, fine. And then on the physical level, so I'm talking about now our physical bodies and our physical lives. Yeah, you could say yes, it's a little bit like, very very loose analogy to us having characters in a very very complex video game. Okay, but here's the thing though, the script or the encoding that comes out for our lives, for our paths, if you want to call it that, in our physical bodies and the events that take place in our lives, all of those lives come together at source level with this encoding that has such a tremendous powerful meaning behind it, and this idea of ability to play a video game. How many video games can you play where you can literally experience ascension, where you can experience multidimensional realizations and growth on exponential levels? So yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe these are kind of like avatars and we're kind of in a video game, because the true us is at a much higher level of reality in a much higher dimension, and we can have multiple characters playing at once. But if we follow the script, and the script is followed through the heart center, but if we stick to the script and all the lives come together in that script, that then this extraordinary process unfolds. Okay, now at a lower vibration, at a lower level of consciousness, at a lower level of awareness, that's going to feel like almost like victim energy, like we're being controlled, like there's a destiny or something that's controlling our lives and all that. But that's not the case. At a higher vibrational level, you realize that we are fully engaged at a higher level of consciousness, at a higher level of awareness. We are fully engaged in the planning and execution of these paths and the agreement to doing these paths and following these encoded scripts. So as, like, people will say, oh my gosh, it's like yin and yang, and it's the balance of good and evil, or it's the balance of life forces, and oh my gosh, if I'm too happy, then the universe is going to balance me out and make sure I have some really traumatic or hard or sad experiences. And so there's this balance of yin and yang, and that's a universal concept, and it fits into the magnetic energy model. But it's not the balance of good and evil. Okay, it's not the balance of happy and sad or joy and pain. That's not what's balancing. What's balancing is the inflow and outflow of the system, because the source coding comes in highly scripted, and it goes on a return path, and as soon as we go off that script, immediate corrective action takes place. Now there's a very big gray area there. So we have this ability to choose on these paths. Even from our ego level, we have the ability to choose in a certain parameter of circumstances. Okay, so there's a lot of scripting that will allow for a lot of liberty in that ability to choose. Like, we can do all kinds of things, right? And it feels like we have free will at the ego level, but of course we don't. At the ego level, the free will takes place at a much much higher level. And now there are certain things that are hard encoded that cannot be essentially messed with or changed without radical repercussions. And so there may be times when all kinds of higher dimensional beings have to step in, because corrective action energies have been engaged that are showing what needs to take place, what events need to take place to correct the script, to get that source encoded path back on track, get that person back on track, so that The full unfolding of all of their lives put together creates the exact intention and meaning that they are creating at a higher level. So it's that balance between the incoming script, if you will, and the outgoing script, that script that goes back to source, that relays every little detail of what has happened and what has changed and what needs to be corrected and everything. I want to make this very clear. Everything that happens in this physical incarnation and in this physical dimension is perfectly recorded at all times down to the subatomic level. And I'm not kidding. It's all recorded down to the subatomic level. Every little thing. That includes thoughts, emotions, and everything. So how our characters play out these multiple lives is all recorded. And it's not recorded because Big Brother is watching. It's recorded because the system works and it keeps that magnetic encoding at a subatomic level. And that really supports us at a higher level when we are putting this whole tapestry of lives together, because it's not just our own paths, it's the paths of all of those involved with us. And then when you get onto a planetary level, the tapestry includes the many lives of everyone involved on the planetary level, and then beyond that to the galactic level. So, and then beyond that. So it's all part of a very big play that's being orchestrated at a much higher level. And it's so important for us to understand that as we engage in that process, and we do that through following our heart center, we got to do our best to keep our vibration high, do our daily meditations, whatever, do our singing bowls, do our crystal work, whatever it takes, exercise, healthy food, to keep our vibrations at a higher level and to keep our heart center focused. That will ensure that we are staying on the script accordingly, and then we will get the absolute most out of life and the most out of the whole thing as it's being created. Now, there are times, of course, when it will look as though the script or what's meant to be is extraordinarily difficult. And a lot of that has to do with right now we're at such a low level of consciousness, a low level of awareness, a low vibration on this planet, that a lot of this scripting has very difficult things in it. But even those very trying, difficult experiences and circumstances and all that physical pain, which, by the way, with magnetic energy, it is the end of that type of pain if people wish for that, okay? And that will be at a heart level to wish for that, because obviously there's a lot of consequences with that. So when you have that power and that kind of technology, everything that we think we want at an egoic level, and that's the point I want to make, is we wish for so many things at an egoic level. But when we start to transition into a new earth energy, into a higher level of awareness and a higher level of consciousness, all of a sudden a lot of those things that we wish for, we don't necessarily want those anymore, because we start to recognize the perfection in the system and how playing these characters out and living these multiple incarnations is way more powerful, way more profound, and deeper and more exciting and revelatory than anything else that we could possibly create. And so it's really cool to like embrace that energy and to really walk that scripted path the way that it's meant to be. And a lot of it is when we get off of that path, our heart energy center hits us with a very harsh high vibration or vibratory energy that tells us something isn't right and we're not listening to what we're supposed to be doing. And people fight that all the time, especially at the ego level. We fight it, and people can go through an entire life fighting that scripted path. But remember, from the universal consciousness, everything's happening at once, so another life will balance that or correct that and balance that and correct that. And it's so that that incoming and outgoing energy matches up, so when it gets back to source, that energy is neutral again. I hope that makes sense, because that energy is coming from source, it's neutrally, but it has a neutral component and it's encoded, and it ultimately is going to go back at that same neutral encoded component of energy, so that a corrective action, that balancing action, brings it back to neutral. I hope that makes sense if I'm saying that right. So some key concepts that I really wanted to get in this video, and I hope that will help you just think about life differently and think about how there's really profound stuff happening in our lives, even when it doesn't seem like there is. There's some really cool stuff that all works together. And so with that, I will see you next time.